All right, let's talk about parts and shadow work. And this is where things get really interesting. I know I've said this before, but I just love how we're getting deeper and deeper to different levels of how do we actually function as humans. And the first thing to understand about parts work is that you are not one, you are many. There's different parts inside each one of us. And you can easily understand that if you just imagine how you go into different roles and different moments in your life. You probably are a different person when you are with your partner on a romantic date than you are with your friends or when you are with your parents. And that is because depending on which situation we are in, different neurological networks in our brains get activated. But if I'd explain all of this on a neurobiological level, this would get boring real fast. So it's easier to understand if we imagine ourselves as a theater house. Now, in this theater house, there's many different characters, and depending on the situation, different ones step on stage and into the limelight. I've tried to demonstrate this for you here in a drawing, but as you can see, there's room for improvement if I wanna not enforce the belief that I would be bad at drawing. So imagine yourself as a theater house, and different parts are stepping into the limelight at different moments. Now, what can happen is that in a certain situation, different parts of you have different needs and functions. An easy way to imagine this is, let's say you want to go on vacation, but you also feel like you should be working. And now you have an internal conflict. This is not because your one self is confused, it's because there's different parts of you that have conflicting needs in this moment. So what you can do is create a conversation between these parts and help them work together. We'll get into how you can do that later on, but this is how you can create more order and clarity inside yourself if you're getting all of the different aspects of yourself on one page. Another example, maybe you want to share your creations with the world and part of you wants to put it online and show other people what you're doing with your music or your business, the things that you have to offer in your life. But there's also a part that doesn't feel good about that. And we already said that not feeling good about something does not mean that you shouldn't do it. It is more like a message that you're getting, like an alert signal. There's something inside that is not 100% aligned with this. So I need to look at it. Doesn't mean that I shouldn't be doing this. It just means that there's some kind of interest conflict inside of me. So this is how the different parts work together inside of yourself. And I have a good example for one of my clients. What he wanted to do was make sales calls so that he can build his business and sell his service. All he wanted to do was actually to offer other people that he could help them reach their goals. But what happened was whenever he wanted to pick up the phone, something happened inside of him. He got real anxious and he just couldn't do it. So this is a classic situation of clear view, felt block. Why do I not do what I already know I should be doing? We looked at the situation and turns out there were two parts in conflict here. He described one as his inner David Goggins that just wanted to get this shit done, like let's just do what needs to be done. And still this part was not strong enough to make things happen. What do you think? What was the other part that was so strong that was keeping him from doing this? It was his inner child. And this child was afraid of rejection, of maybe being annoying to the other people. And funnily enough, that these people would tell his parents and they would get mad at him. So all of these things, they can happen inside of you without you even notice. All you see is I'm sitting at my desk and I should be making this call and I'm not doing it. But the more you observe these things, the more you can resolve these conflicts and things will get way easier and you will be able to move through these blocks and do what needs to be done. Or stop doing what you don't want to do, because some parts of ourselves, they do things that we don't really want to do. Which again brings us to the second principle. Every part of us acts in our best interest. Even if we're talking about our inner critic and you might hate that motherfucker because he's always keeping you from actually just doing things and enjoying yourself, your inner critic has a good reason for existing. All of your parts have a good reason for existing. The way our parts come into the world, this will be helpful to understand, is that especially in childhood, we try out different things. And if something works, we learn that okay, so if I work hard, I can get things. So you develop one center of your brain, which is about, okay, Let's learn how to work hard and be disciplined. And then you realize in a different situation, if I do this, that gets me in trouble. So I shouldn't be doing that. And you develop a part that takes care that you don't do these things. For example, if you had to stand up in front of the class and everybody was laughing at you in second grade, then this part will have developed in that moment to make sure that you're never doing that again in the future. You don't ever want to be that embarrassed. So even now, if part of you thinks I should be going on stage, I want to show myself, there's a part inside of you that's like, I don't think that's a good idea. And it's not because it hates you or it's working against you. You're self-sabotaging because there's a different need that is way more important for you beneath this. In this case, your own security. You would rather feel safe than realize your dreams. So what can we do about this? We can work with these parts. We can make them understand that now we are adults and they don't need to be that afraid anymore. And it's okay to have some fear and still we can act. And we can be in communication with those parts. We'll get into the methods you can use in a second, but here's a sentence by Carl Gustav Jung, whom we talked about in the last video, that really summarizes this quite well. He said, until you make your unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And this is interesting, no? Like, often we feel life is just happening to us. And this is exactly where we can make this change from victim of our circumstances to creator of our own life. If we can take responsibility for what is going on in our unconscious. Most of our lives are directed by this. So it's worth having a look at this. Which brings us to shadow work. It's another very interesting aspect because your shadow basically is one of the parts of you. It's just that this shadow represents all of the stuff that you don't like about yourself, that you've absolutely repressed and rejected, and that you say, this is not me. That's what shadow work is all about. We need to learn what these parts are of us that we've rejected and integrate them back into our own self. Learn to accept them and to let them work together with the different parts of us. And by the way, the mature masculine archetypes are also parts of you. This is a very good example for parts because all of these archetypes, they exist inside of you, just some might be in their shadows, some are not really fully developed yet, and all of them have different priorities. So how do we work with this? How can we resolve those kinds of conflicts in our lives? How can we integrate our shadow and make our different parts work together so we don't lose our whole energy fighting against ourselves in these moments and instead have all parts of ourselves working together to focus on solving the situation and moving forward with our life. So I've put together a few practices for you that you can use to work with this. You might have realized by now you want to have a journal. Journaling is a great exercise, especially when it comes to parts, because what you can do is you can note the different opinions of different parts on a certain situation. Whenever you feel torn in your life, you can sit down and write down the conversation between the two parts. You could declare one of the parts of you that you think would be a good leader for such a conversation as moderator, and then find a solution, like give space to both sides to explain what they want, what they need, and then find a solution where the needs of both sides are met and they can work together. So that's great for parts work. For shadow work, one thing that you really need to do is reflection. And something you can do is you can look at your different judgments that you have about other people. Your judgments will reveal your shadow self. Look at what is it that triggers you in other people. And then investigate with a lot of honesty, where in my life do I act like this? There's some great practices that we do in our man circles where two men stand together and we check with everybody if somebody feels off with somebody else. And then we do this process where you tell the other person, I've observed this and this is what annoys me about you. And then the man that said that is asked to reflect on himself, where in my life do I act like this? This is shadow work and integration in practice. And you can do that by yourself if you just look at, who am I judging? And where am I like these people? Another way to make these things conscious is step number 3, observe your reactions. Whenever you find yourself in a situation where you're triggered, this is the perfect moment to practice. You don't have to solve everything right in the moment, but write it down and look at those situations later. Reflect on what did happen in that moment. Why did I get so mad? Why did this hurt me so much? This will give you a lot of information about different parts that have been hurt and your shadow. And here's one that's a bit different: dream analysis. Carl Jung used to work a lot with that with his clients. Basically, what you can do is you keep a little notebook beside your bed, and every evening you set the intention to remember your dreams, and in the morning you write them down. If you analyze your dreams, they can tell you a lot about what is going on in your subconscious and your shadow. Your dreams are your brain processing everything that is going on subconsciously. So if you can remember them and look at them, you will be able to learn a lot from those dreams. And the last thing that you can do, which is a very powerful practice, is doing inner child work. Getting to know the child inside of you is so helpful in this, because most of these things, most of your shadow developed in your childhood. And if you can get in contact with that part of you, it will reveal a lot about your shadow. So spend some time with your inner child and understanding it better. It's important to know that it is not functioning from the reasoning of an adult. Your inner child still feels in the state of when it was a child. So you also need to treat it as a child. Not like my client who had this David Goggins screaming at his inner child that he should just do the fucking work and get it done. You need to understand why it feels the way it feels. Create some space for that, and you will learn a lot about yourself and why you act the way you do, even now as an adult. So heal the boy to free the man.